You can have dinner with us. You like head cheese? My brother makes it real good. You like it?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey kids, welcome to Grumpy Nostalgia, the Second Look Cinema podcast, the show where we go back to the blockbuster new release wall of our memory, grab a copy off the shelf, pop it in the VCR, and see what time has done to it. I'm Justin, that's Mike.
Heyo.
And that's Aaron.
Shut up, you bitch hog.
Exactly. And we're the bitch hogs assigned to help you navigate all the landmines littered down memory lane. Term of endearment in Texas, I'm sure, guys. All right, so you can tell by our opening statement what kind of mood we're in here, guys. This was a fun one. First of all, we want to welcome you back to our Halloween series. We're talking about the big box VHS horror spectacular BooNanza or whatever, right, Mike?
I think that's what we were calling it. Yeah, BooNanza was a good one.
Yeah.
Stuck.
Yeah, but we're in episode 3 here, featuring our friend Aaron. So, Aaron, how are you, man? Good to see you.
Doing well. Good to be back, guys.
And Aaron, this was Aaron's choice, so you can either applaud him at the end or blame him at the end based on your
Sorry.
taste. All right, so I think there's really not a whole lot to do other than just get kind of into this because there's a lot to talk about here. In terms of horror movies, this is probably on the Mount Rushmore of those, I would think. Oh, yeah. And it had to be talked about at some point. And I don't think we would have shoehorned this in our regular series, but I'm glad that we had an opportunity to cover it in
glad I could be the shoehorn.
This special seasonal thing. So let's just jump right in. So this was directed by Tobe Hooper, who we all remember from such iconic horror films as Poltergeist, Salem's Lot, the Billy Idol Dancing with Myself music video, which is to me the most horrible thing I've ever seen.
Scariest thing he did.
Yeah. He also served as the film's co-writer along with a guy named Kim Henkel, and together those two kind of collaborated on 20 Texas Chainsaw themed projects over the year. It had a $140,000 budget. And it started out with like 60,000 and they realized that they needed at least 80,000 to finish the movie in terms of editing and post-production. So yeah, it's all right up there on the stage. This does not look like it cost a whole lot of money. And that was kind of the point. All that extra 80,000 extra really just came out of the royalties of the film too. So everybody kind of got the shaft because their budgeting allowances weren't up to stuff. And this got released on October 11th, 1974.
A few days after my birthday.
Look at that.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Young kid.
4.
Yeah.
I would have been
Whippersnapper.
3.
This is the second movie in as many shows, Mike, that we talked about. A movie from 1974. That's weird.
I know, right?
Yeah. What are the odds?
Was Young Frankenstein after this one, or was it before it?
That was in, I think that was earlier. That was in December.
Okay, so it was a little bit after this. All right.
He had Blazing Saddles came out in January of that year.
Yeah.
I mean, Blazing Saddles, the premiere was at a drive-in theater in Southern California, and everybody at the drive-in were on horseback.
Oh,
that's a true story. Greatest premiere ever. This is the part where we usually ask Mike to talk about the cast, but
I have no knowledge of any of these people. This is all. I'm sure these are just Texas natives or whatnot, but I don't know.
Yeah, none of these guys went on to do Shakespeare in the Park or any major acting careers, but Aaron's a pseudo expert on some of this. So let's help out Mike a little bit here. What I know is Marilyn Burns, who coined the term Scream Queen. She died in 2014, unfortunately. She was in the movie Helter Skelter, too. I thought that was cool. I think Aaron, the character Leatherface, is played by a guy named Gunnar Hansen. Is that correct?
Gunnar Hansen. Yep.
Yeah.
What Mike said, these were basically a bunch of local yokels. I mean, they were all, for the most part, actors doing regional stuff, theater and whatnot. And I don't know that any of them went on to much of anything.
No.
That I could think of.
No, from what I could tell, most of them just kind of lived on the convention circuit.
Yeah.
I guess the only actor of any relevance here is John Larroquette, who played the lawyer on Night Court in the 80s there. He played the voice of the narrator.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He was paid with a joint of marijuana. That was his payment for the film. He admits to this day he's never seen the film. But Hooper wanted somebody that sounded a little bit like Orson Welles, and he had the tone in his voice. So I guess that's the closest thing to a brush with greatness this movie has.
That's funny.
Yeah, I think
but just a lot of bit actors and bit parts here, and that's kind of the cast. So Mike, you got a week off this week, so just be prepared to bring it next week. So.
I'll bring it.
Yeah.
But it really helps the fact that these are a bunch of nobodies.
Yeah, I don't think you want to see Dustin Hoffman getting his head bashed in here.
He turned it down, I think.
Yeah, probably did. So just a couple of notes about the film.
Yeah, we don't have our usual list of what actors were turned down the project.
Yeah, this movie kind of breaks format for our little show here quite a bit.
John Travolta.
Yeah, Harrison Ford turned down the role of proprietor.
Robert Redford was thinking of the Leatherface, but
Martin Scorsese passed on the project. Yeah. So just a few notes about the film, just to kind of fill the gap here. So Marilyn Burns, who played the lead character Sally, she spent a good there's our Franklin riff already. She spent the greatest part of this film actually getting cut up and bleeding herself. A lot of that blood you see on her is her real blood. The third act of this film was just her running through the Texas briars and getting scratched, and several other life-threatening situations. So a lot of that blood's on her own. Because of that, this movie, surprise, surprise, received an X rating upon release. But what's interesting here, and I think this will be a talking point through the rest of our show, is there's not a lot of violence in this movie, comparatively speaking. Most of the violence is off screen. There's not a lot of gore. There's no nudity. There's hardly any language. In fact, the implied horror is what earned the X rating. In fact, several test audiences could not take this film. A lot of them walked out because of that. In a weird kind of irony, they had to add on-screen violence to the film to get an R rating. So they had to change their approach. If you'll notice, there's a weird technique in the filming here. When they kind of foreshadow any kind of horrible event with they skip frames. Did you guys see that? Tobe Hooper and his editor intentionally cut frames, set up this cue that something horrible is going to happen. And when you watch the film in retrospect, you see that, and it really is off-putting to see that jerky editing style that's followed by this horrible act of violence. But that was something they kind of invented there. Actor Gunnar Hansen kind of developed the Leatherface character as kind of a mentally disabled guy. Of course, there were no deep character notes in the script here. They all were of their own devices to develop this, but he had spent some time around people with mental disabilities. He had noticed some of the attributes of that, and he said it seemed to make sense. And I think that's what makes this a little bit more scary, is that they didn't go for the nameless, faceless, invulnerable killer here. They went for people with realistic.
So he's like Brad Pitt.
Yeah, exactly. Method actor. Speaking of Gunnar Hansen, he only had one costume. He had one shirt to wear during the entire shoot. And he, needless to say, he got a little stinky. This was a 4-week shoot in the Texas heat. I think the heat never got below 95 degrees, mostly 90s at night even. As you can see, most of the characters in this, of course, this film are just completely saturated with sweat. It just looked really unpleasant. That cast really earned about $400 for their efforts in this film. That was mostly because of the producers at the time used this film to funnel cash from Deep Throat, which is also out during that time. This was a front to launder money for that production. It was kind of mob run.
Right.
New Line actually ultimately ended up buying the rights to this film and kind of retroactively paid the actors, I think, $25,000 for their efforts here, so to set things right. But a shelf for a porn studio, mostly to launder their money. So that's another nefarious origins for this film.
Did Linda Lovelace did she make a lot of money?
I'll have to get back to you on that one, Mike.
Okay.
Who's Linda Lovelace? Never heard of her.
They know that one.
They only had one chainsaw, one chainsaw prop, and it was a real one. So obviously they didn't have any kind of safety teams on the set. So this was a real chainsaw. So everybody had to be super careful during all the scenes.
I'm sure Gunnar was super safety.
Oh yeah, you could tell by his
put a mask on and swing a chainsaw.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So a method actor.
By his fluid, disciplined movements, you knew he was safety was first on all that for sure. This was inspired by the tale of Ed Gein, which is also served as the inspiration for several serial killer movies, most notably Silence of the Lambs. Speaking of inspiration, Ridley Scott saw this and was inspired to the point where he wanted to make this version in space. That's where Alien came from. His famous work in 1979. And we'll kind of jump ahead to the end there, but the little dance that Gunnar does at the end with his chainsaw, that was completely improvised.
No way.
No choreographer needed voice. But what that was is almost a candid thing where he was just kind of running around out of frustration. That was the last scene shot of the movie. And after that was done, he did that little dance out of frustration and futility and just relief that it was all over with. And that actually made it into the film. So there you go.
It's pretty cool. The sunrise in the background. It's almost looks like a music video. Almost.
For as cheap as this was, I mean, we'll get to this obviously as we discuss the merits of the film, but this looked professional. There was composition to the scenes. It was well lit. It was primarily at night, but you could see everything, a trait that most Hollywood films have abandoned now. We talked about how dark movies are for several times in the show, but the composition of the scenes, the cinematography, I mean, this is all, from a photographic standpoint, this thing was shot extremely well.
Yeah, amazing.
Talked about when this came out, you needed a certain society to allow this type of thing to be released, right? So I think the argument can be made that something like this might not get out today, at least not by a studio release. But in 1974, as we discussed before with Young Frankenstein, things were a little different. This came out on October 18th, as I mentioned, same weekend as Airport 75, starring such heroes as Charlton Heston, show favorite Karen Black. You had Linda Blair, Jerry Stiller, George Kennedy, and a cameo by Eric Estrada. You can't get more 70.
Yeah. You're going to have George Kennedy in it for sure.
Yeah.
This is the era of the disaster flick, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, George
Towering
Kennedy.
Infernos and Poseidon Adventures and
right. Yeah, I think George Kennedy was in all of them. My boy can eat 50 eggs.
That's right.
He's a great actor. I love that guy. Yeah. About a week earlier, you had the another great movie that came out that was in theaters at the same time, Taking a Pelham 123. So if you want to see the rhyme, then come see me. That was a great film, remade horribly by John Travolta in the 2000s, I believe. This was number 13 on the box office chart in 1974. That year, The Sting won Best Picture and about 7 Oscars, but Blazing Saddles, Towering Inferno, to Aaron's point. Number 3 was Billy Jack, which me and Mike had a lot of fun at the expense of Young Frankenstein. We got to watch that movie at some point.
Yeah.
Young Frankenstein was number 4. I'm sorry, this was 14th. Number 13 was Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry. And I only bring that up because it's one of my favorite titles for a movie ever.
Thanks.
That's a racing movie, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah. Was that Scorsese or is that, I think it's something else?
No, you're thinking of
Big Bad Mama.
Yeah, Big Bad Mama. Yeah, this is something altogether different. But I think Peter Fonda was in that one. The TV, we were watching epic shows like Rhoda and Maude.
Right on, Maude.
Yeah, that's when you had to have a really hot girl as a lead for your kids. Yeah.
And then came Maude. There's
came Maude.
That Adrienne Barbeau though on that show?
Yeah, she was one of the top star movie stars, yes, but she was on that as well. Hawaii Five-0 was on the TV at the same time, and then a show called Good Times. Featuring Jimmy Walker, who spends most of his time in the Charlotte area selling HVAC.
Yes, he's gone. His career really went somewhere.
Yeah, he's heating and cooling, and guess what? He uses the phrase "dynamite" in his commercials. Who would have thought?
No, a dynamite.
That's like Ric Flair saying "woo, woo." Wow.
Exactly. This movie kind of captured a theme that was really kind of prevalent in the 70s. That was kind of they were drive-in flicks that had the kind of based on a faux reality. They were designed to make the audience believe they were real. Other films in the genre included A Boggy Creek, which is one of Mike's personal favorites. It spawned a series of sequels, each one worse than the other. About Bigfoot. Bigfoot was a big fad in the 70s. You had the movie Walking Tall with another show favorite, Joe Don Baker, which was implied to be a true story, based on a true story. And Jackson County Jail, which are all kind of these exploitative type campy movies that were designed to fool the audience into thinking they're somehow real. And this movie kind of fit right into that theme. On the pop charts, that was a lot of fun, guys. You guys are musical guys. Let's do a little quiz here. So I'm going to name a title, and you guys can fight it out for who the artist was. Okay. So we had Nothing from Nothing.
Billy Preston.
Very good, very good.
Mike's going to kill me on this one.
Yeah. The Bitch is Back.
That's Elton John for sure.
John.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet?
The Rangers ain't seen nothing.
You got that one, Aaron.
Yeah.
Canadian.
Go ahead, Mike.
BTO.
Baby, you got that wrong.
It's one of the best stuttering songs ever.
Yeah. We had the song "Skin Tight." Anybody want to take this?
Oh,
that's a deeper one.
They also had the song "Roller Coaster of Love."
The OJs or the Ohio players?
Ohio Players, very good. Yeah. And
all the O's.
Another big song here was Tin Man.
America.
There you go, Mike. Good job. That's a lot of Casey Kasem listening there, Mike. A lot of
knowledge is always impressive.
The 70s is the best. I'm gonna say, just like spectrum of music. I mean, you look at the number one songs from the 70s, and it's just incredible what that decade went through. When you think of the Beatles all the way to Donna Summer, it's just like everything in between. It's just like, wow, that was quite a decade of music.
Well, that's a great segue. So here's my last two for extra credit. That kind of hits that point. The Night Chicago Died.
Paper Lace.
Very good, very good. And then Stop and Smell the Roses.
Oh, that's a good one. Mac Davis.
So there you go. One pulled to the other. So very nice.
He was also star from North Dallas 40.
That's right.
True.
Wow. Mike went full savant there, man. That's really good.
But also Justin, I want to drop this guy's name in because I know you love this guy more than any of these other characters. He had spiders and snakes. My bulldog drinks champagne. You love him, but you probably loved him most in a movie that you saw where he was a race car driver.
Was this
Buffalo Bill? Come on, you got it.
Oh boy!
This was 1974 was his year. Like, he was the biggest name.
I had his name, and then I started thinking about.
You don't like spiders and snakes,
that ain't what it takes.
There you go. Jim Stafford.
Yikes.
Jim Stafford.
Yikes.
Yes.
The horror.
I don't even know how many hits he must have had in that year, but my goodness.
I'm going to say too many.
Yeah, way too many for our taste. And I think it was the year.
So many we don't remember him.
It was the year of the streak, also, too. Just say
that's Ray
Stevens.
Ray Stevens. Yeah.
One of the biggest songs of the year was a novelty song about streaking. So there you go.
All right, so let's go from that horror to a different type of horror. So we're going to talk about The Ultimate Midnight Movie. We're going to talk about one of the really a groundbreaking film in many senses of the word. There's no in between on this. You either have seen this movie and enjoy it, or you will never see it. There's no. Yeah, I saw it. I didn't know how I felt about it. It doesn't live in that gray area. You form an opinion one way or the other, and with questionable beginnings and humble box office, it is grown into, from a cultural standpoint at least, as we mentioned before, just one of the most iconic horror films ever made. And let's just kind of get in there and see how it came. So, Mike, if you're ready, why don't you?
Yeah, I got an uncle that works in a slaughterhouse, so he told me how to hit a button.
All right, so our movie kind of starts with like an art film type font, and it says, a film by Tobe Hooper, all lowercase, looking all kind of prim and proper. Mm-hmm. And you get that scroll. The narration is as we mentioned, it's read by John Larroquette.
The film which you are about to see is an account of the tragedy which befell a group of 5 youths, in particular Sally Hardesty and her invalid brother Franklin. The events of that day were to lead to the discovery of one of the most bizarre crimes in the annals of American history: the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
It's implied that this is all real, so it hints that there's even scarier things behind it. But as Larroquette's narration is over, we get the graphic on the screen, August 18th, 1973. And it kind of opens up with this news reporter.
I'm going to bring up, Justin, I'm going to bring up some news stories to you. I want you to tell me which one should be your lead. Okay, I want you to be the editor in a newsroom. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Unexplained suicides in Houston. A building collapse in Atlanta. Cholera outbreak in San Francisco. And some bad murders in Gary, Indiana. And bodies were dug up in a local cemetery in rural Texas. Which one of those would be your lead?
I I give up. Which one?
Oh, well, of course, bodies being dug up in Muerto County or whatever. Yeah,
that's awful. It. Yeah, just this is horrendous, guys. and the sheriff Jesus Maldonado is mentioned twice in this movie.
Yes.
Probably the worst sheriff in all time, but but anyway, they realize they describe that there's some grave robbing going on, and it kind of opens up with this quote unquote artwork done where you see these two corpses wired together. That disturbing image kind of hits you right in the face, and there's a lot of imagery and sound that go around with it, and it kind of explains what this movie is going to be. So the movie kind of opens up. We get introduced to our main cast, and like several great movies of this type, it opens up with a urination scene. There's a van full of hippies driving across Texas, and the younger girl Sally is, she heard the news on the radio of this grave robbing. She was concerned that her grandfather's grave might have been getting desecrated. She heads out to the cemetery, and they got everybody in the van. They're doing 70s things. They're talking about astrology and left their bras at home and all that good stuff.
Say that.
Again, one of the main character, Sally's younger brother named Franklin, is confined to a wheelchair, and Franklin's he's a piece of work. So yeah, he's got to go potty. So they pull over to the side of the road and put some boards down for him to wheel out and
give him a tin cup to pee in.
So we get a full frontal view of him getting ready to pee in a cup, and then the heartthrob Kirk lets go of the chair, and as Mike will note, this was a Mac and Me scene where he wheels himself loose in the wheelchair and falls down the hill, and we're supposed to think that's funny, I think. So they kind of gather themselves and get collected, and they go back and put Franklin back in the car, and executing several choices of guided by poor judgment, they decide to pick up a hitchhiker on the side of the road who's
maybe the worst hitchhiker ever.
Kind of looks like a
Manson family reject, maybe.
Yeah, like if Adam Driver was cloned 17 times. He's got a nice little port wine
birthmark on his face.
He gets in the car and he's a little flaky, and he proceeds to tell the crew about how they make head cheese at the slaughterhouse.
See, they make head cheese. They take the head and they boil it, except for the tongue, and they scrape all the flesh away from the bone.
So he pulls out a knife. First of all, he's infatuated by Franklin's knife, and he grabs it and cuts his hand to bleed in front of everybody. And they still haven't pulled the car over at this point. I thought the head cheese conversation would trigger that, but he goes on to take a photo of the crew and hands it to Franklin, and Franklin's, I guess, not impressed with his photography skills. So he takes it back, and like most photographers do when you reject their work, he pours gunpowder on it, and explodes, and pulls out a straight razor and cuts Franklin's arm. I guess that act enough was alone to finally figure out that he's not somebody you want to have in your van. So
that happens when you criticize artists,
That's artists are a touchy bunch.
They can get angry.
So they just kind of pass that as, oh, that was a weird dude, so the next scene they pull up to a gas station. I love the title here of this gas station, guys. It was We Slaughter Barbecue.
Yeah, the way it's written too, with the We Slaughter next to the barbecue is great. It's like We Slaughter Barbecue.
Coca-Cola. We Slaughter. The We Slaughters at a conveniently smaller font. I guess the marketing campaign was really paying off. But they stop and get 10-cent bottles of Coke, and we get to ogle the girls from a butt cam while they're doing that, which is nice. They decide to go in and get some barbecue because there's no gas at this gas station, and they're met by two odd individuals. One is this the proprietor, who's apparently they don't have dental insurance on his plan at the gas station there, and that the weird lackey guy that's like washing the
looking at the stunt.
Yeah. The Clint Howard looking guy.
Yeah, he decides to wash their windshield with about 75 gallons of water. But they tell him that they're on their way to see the old house that they used to live in. He says, "Well, I wouldn't go there if I were you. That place is cursed," and all that good stuff. But of course, kids in that era just did things that they wanted to do. So they get some barbecue. and they use what little gas they have to go on to their the old family house. So drifted in on fumes, they kind of reach Sally and Franklin's childhood home. I guess to hang out there for some reason. Sally and Franklin have a contentious relationship, and Franklin manifests that by blowing a lot of raspberries. There's a scene here where he has about 35 seconds of protected raspberries. So I guess that was big in the 70s. I don't know, guys. I guess they ran out of dialogue.
It was a carryover. It was a carryover from All in the Family, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So Super Hunk Kirk and his girlfriend. What's his girlfriend? I think it was Pam. Yeah. They decided they want to go.
I'm sorry, it wasn't Pam. It was Pamela.
Yeah, they decide they want to do the standard horror trope of skinny dipping. So they go on to try to find a pond, and on their way to the swimming hole, they notice a house next door that's running a generator. So they assume they've got plenty of gas. So Kirk decides to walk into this seemingly abandoned house, and he opens the door and he sees blood and feathers and bones and a lot of taxidermy things. So he decides, hey, this seems hospitable. I'm going to walk right in. And the first jarring horror moment really hits here, and that's when the character named Leatherface, who's this hulking beast of a guy that's wearing mummified skin over his face.
Apron and mummified skin. Right?
He opens up the stainless steel door in the kitchen, the slaughter room, essentially, and smashes Kirk in the head with a sledgehammer. And that scene right there says, "Okay, guys, welcome to the movie." And it's graphic.
It's jarring.
It's jarring, and it's shot very non-traditionally. It's shot like a long shot, or a long to medium shot, and it looks and feels real when he gets hit.
It's matter of fact. I mean, there's no music leading up to it. There's no like little rapid violin strum right when he gets stabbed. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and when he slams that door shut and that music, bam! You're like, whoa, this is it. It's on.
And this is where the movie kind of morphs into something like you think I shouldn't be seeing this, you know. Mm-hmm. And then that's the sense of a good horror movie. It puts you in that spot where this is not something I should be doing. And I think and there's an element of realism here that there's almost a snuff film mentality to it. That, but I'll
and I love the. Where it leads from there into the next scene, which is just one of the most amazing scenes in the movie, where she calls out to him, Kirk, and she's on a swing, and it's shot from behind, like a dolly shot where she stands up, the dolly goes underneath the swing and follows her to this house, and you see the house grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and engulfs her. She gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
That's that composition I was kind of mentioning. That they don't do that in modern horror films. They kind of fit their own little template. They just kind of do the same kind of shots over and over again. But this is really from a director of photography standpoint to a cinematography standpoint. I mean, these are things that just look different and hit harder. And literally, so to Aaron's point, Pamela goes in to make an inquiry, and she gets snatched by him and carried in. And that scene's not good either. That really kind of gave me the creeps, and I watched this thing in the middle of the day.
Fly off.
Yeah, just not good. And she unfortunately gets put up on a meat hook, which was too realistic for me. Not good. And she's forced to watch Leatherface kind of process Kirk's body with the chainsaw. Mm-hmm. That's when the chainsaw comes out at 37 minutes here, guys. So
it's the official massacre.
Yeah. So meanwhile, back at the ranch, we've got Sally and Franklin, bickering, and the other guy we didn't talk about here is a guy named Jerry, who's the token 70s guy. Yeah, they call out for Jerry for a long time.
Jerry!
Jerry decides to take matters in his own hands.
Was he wearing a gold medallion? I couldn't remember.
He might as well have been. He looked like Disco.
Was open a little bit. Yeah, he was ready to go.
He looked like Disco Stew from The Simpsons. But Jerry in his man perm and his big Dahmer eyeglasses and his floral shirt decides to take the matter into his own hands. So he goes over to the next door, and he suffers the same fate as Kirk. He gets a sledgehammer to the head, and they're dropping like flies, guys. And so Sally and Franklin, it's nighttime now, and they're wondering where everybody has gone. They decide, after an apocalyptic fight over the flashlight, they decide to head off to see if they can find their friends in the dark, not knowing that both the guys had bonk bonk on head. They're not coming back. So they set off in the dark, and that's where we get the first and only chainsaw related death here.
Yeah, I was wondering why this movie was called that.
Leatherface appears and kind of chainsaws our poor little guy in the wheelchair to death.
Franklin.
And at this point, you're just kind of numb to all this, but this is just as shocking as anything else. Just the way he kind of just gouges him with this chainsaw, the way it's shot. Again, shot in the middle of the night, but the audience can still see what's happening. And I just thought that was just well, maybe you didn't want to see what's happening. I don't know, but so this sets off the most horrendous third act in movie history. From this point on, it's essentially just the chainsaw and Sally screaming. She's running for her life. It's upsetting and it's jarring, and you don't even realize it while you're watching it. But she screams for almost 20 minutes straight here, guys, and it's not good.
Yeah, when she passes out after her fingers are cut, it's kind of a relief for a couple minutes.
Yeah, because there's some silence finally. It's like, shut that kid up,
Yeah, bring down Dusty Grandpa. Let him feed.
Well, we're getting there, Mike. So she's getting chased through the briars and the weeds, and we find out here that the chainsaw is actually multifunctional. It kind of clears the path for Leatherface as well. But she runs all the way down to the gas station that we were at previously in the film, and its proprietor comes out and he tries to comfort her, and he says, "I'm going to go get my truck. I'll be right back to help you." And she's sitting there quietly, just obviously shaken and frozen and screaming, and he comes back with a rope and a bag, pursues her and ties her up and throws her in the truck.
And you're talking about my music PTSD earlier.
Yeah.
They were playing the same country song in the daytime that they were at night. So I'm like, what station are you listening to? It was the same Ray Price song. I was like, wait, come on, don't you have more variety in your station?
That's the beauty of AM radio,
I guess.
So she thought she had respite there, but it turns out that she's actually come back into the arms of the guy who's in cahoots with the family that lives with Leatherface's house. This proprietor is there. And they have a nice little family reunion, because as they get back home into the driveway, we meet the
hitchhiker.
Meet the hitchhiker guy, who we forgot to mention is also the artist who's digging up the graves and desecrating them and making his art.
Yes.
So they have a little altercation in the driveway about who's stupid. The term bitch hog gets thrown out here.
Now is he the proprietor name says it once, but I couldn't tell if is he Leatherface's brother or brother-in-law?
As I understand it, and Aaron, you can correct me here, but I think the proprietor is the dad, and I think his brothers are the hitchhiker and Leatherface.
Yes, that's
okay.
And then of course, Grandma and Grandpa live upstairs.
Yes,
and they're a little sweet. So as I mentioned, we have a family reunion. What I thought was really disturbing here too is the way he pokes her with the broom in the bag. Like there's this childish, there's this childish like cat with a mouse thing that these guys have with this girl through the course of the film. It's like they're disassociated from reality. They don't think she's like a real thing. It's just like a plaything to them, and that's what's really creepy.
Back and forth in that scene where he's like, "Oh, it's gonna be all right. You'll be fine." And then he just starts poking her again, poking her. Oh, it'll be all right, quiet.
Yeah, he has brushes with morality, but he breaks that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So they decide that they're gonna have a nice dinner, and it's a formal dinner because Grandpa's wearing a jacket. And we realize that this family, which is I think later called the Sawyer family, is they go upstairs and bring Grandpa down, and Grandpa's looked like Dustin Hoffman, a little big man. That makeup here, he's just an old catatonic guy,
a little prunish.
Yeah, and there's some continuity with the story because it turns out he was one of the guys that worked in the slaughterhouse. He was the best guy that ever worked in the slaughterhouse from their story.
Legend.
And they find out that she's there to be the meal. So they cut her finger to draw some blood, and then Grandpa takes a few draws off that.
Little happy dance.
Yeah, they decide out of a show of respect, which is actually a tactical error when it's all said and done, is that they decide to let Grandpa do the honors of whacking her on the head. And this is where the first time I saw this, like, okay, I've had enough at this point. I thought this was just too much, but they put a bucket on the floor because they don't want to mess up the house. But they put her. They're like trying to get this catatonic figure to smash her with a hammer. And all that kind of chaos kind of allows her to break free and run screaming. And by now it's dawn, and she's kind of running towards the highway, and the hitchhiker guy and Leatherface are chasing her down, and she gets grabbed in the middle of the highway and breaks free, and then conveniently a Peterbilt truck is coming around at the same time, and that kind of hits and flattens out the hitchhiker. The truck driver gets out to see what the hell's going on. And he's like, yeah, I'm not, I'm so much for this. He grabs I think a wrench, and he's getting pursued by Leatherface. And he throws it at him and bonks him in the head. And Leatherface is knocked to a prone position. As he falls, the chainsaw kind of cuts a good chunk out of his thigh, which I thought was just really creepy. Another truck kind of pulls up to see what's going on, and she jumps in the back of the cab. And this handicapped Leatherface can't find the speed to pursue her, so she speeds off in this cab, covered in blood and screaming hysterically, almost laughing that she, avoided this final confrontation with Leatherface. And we get this beautiful little silhouetted dance that Leatherface does. He takes the chainsaw over his head, and he's backlit by the morning sun, and he's waving it around, and you get this like stark, smashing black cut to immediate black, no fade out, just stops.
Mm-hmm.
And you get that organ music, and the movie's over, and they just show with no music, just the credits on the screen. And this is where you finally exhale because the movie's over. The screaming stops and all that, and there's no follow-up scene.
Yeah, her laugh at the end too when she's in the back of the truck, all covered in blood.
Just maniacal.
Yeah.
That laugh that sticks with it. Yeah,
and I think Marilyn Burns, because of what she was in, she probably doesn't get the recognition she probably deserves. But the acting performance here that she does, there's an element of realism there to it.
Mm-hmm.
She probably was scared to death.
She did say that that end, that she was so overwhelmed by everything that that was real.
It just kind of comes through, right? So it's just a gut wrenching movie, guys, and well, I guess we'll kind of get into our feelings upon it when we kind of talk about it. But let's just talk really briefly about the awards and accolades. So they didn't really report opening weekends back in the 70s, but this did have a $30 million domestic haul.
Wow!
It was the largest grossing independent film until Halloween came out in 1978. But this was a huge box office. Again, these are 1974 dollars, guys. So that's scaled for inflation. This was a big hit. We mentioned it was number 14 that year total box office. This is when everybody went to the movies still. I picked up another $1,300 in a 2021 re-release in Australia for some reason. Entertainment Weekly has named it number 2 of the scariest movies of all time, just behind The Exorcist there. And from a pop culture standpoint, again, name me one person that doesn't know what the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is. It has had 8 sequels/remakes since its original film in 1974. The most recent being 2022's Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Netflix, which was one of the highest grossing in terms of viewing hours for Netflix ever. So people have an appetite for this film, no pun intended, all these years later. So, but there's no people in between here. You either appreciate this or you're repulsed by it. So let's see where the grumpy nostalgia crew kind of falls here. So, Aaron, why don't you go first? Let's talk about the first time you saw this, your impressions, and if anything has changed from your most recent viewing as a grown up.
It's one thing for a movie to scare you when you're a kid, and it's another thing for that still to be effective when you're a grown up.
Yeah.
And this, to me, is one of those rare ones that still, it's just unsettling watching it. I've seen this movie many times, and from the first time until now, about a week ago, I watched it, I think, and it still has all its power for me. Now, none of us would have saw this in the theater unless we had really horrible parents and babysitter. We were all in our threes, I think, 3 or 4 years old. So the first time I saw this would have been during the video store boom of the mid 80s, which I'm sure you guys remember well. Yeah. Every town had at least one video store. And if you don't know what the video store is, I should probably explain a little bit if you're younger listening to this. A video store was where you went and rented movies on a VHS tape.
Yeah. It's like Netflix in real life.
Yes, it was a physical Netflix. Yeah. So there you go. Thank you, Justin. You know, before you could stream, you had to get on your bike and ride to the store and hope your tape was not checked out already. So I would have saw this sometime in the mid 80s. I was already obsessed with movies back then, so this was just one of many horror movies that I rented from my local shop. You had no way of seeing these movies. You had to wait for them to come on TV otherwise.
Yeah, fat chance with this one, right?
Right, exactly. Imagine this one being on the, the editing we had to do to this movie.
The CBS mystery movie, Mike.
And I know I saw this before the first sequel came out, which is around the same time, I think, in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
Because I remember being excited that there was a sequel so soon after I saw the original, which was actually 12 years after the original came out.
Relative, though. Yeah.
But we can talk about the sequel some other time. Yeah. My first impression was this is nothing like the slasher movies I had been watching. This is singular. It seemed almost too real. And one thing Justin, you mentioned how well it was shot, and how some of the night scenes you could really see everything. But I remember the poor VHS quality tapes back then.
Yeah.
When there was night scenes, you couldn't really see anything.
Yeah.
And this is one of those that kind of suffered from that to a degree.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
The night scenes were hard to see. Had that real grindhouse look to it,
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah, that's it.
And maybe that helped in a strange way.
Yeah, it kind of lets your imagination fill in the gaps too, which is not good either.
And this is probably the first movie that I saw restored on Blu-ray that really was like night and day. I was like, this is astonishing how it went from this crappy looking VHS tape to this movie that was, it was still shot on 16 millimeter, still had grain.
Yeah.
It was just night and day how good it looked. You could really appreciate the cinematography in it.
Yeah.
The score is, we got to talk about the score because it's just truly unique, one of a kind. It's done by Tobe Hooper, and I forgot who else helped do it. It's a lot of non-traditional instruments, a lot of just sounds. You don't know really what you're hearing.
Yeah.
These strange stings, and the set pieces are truly stunning and just warped.
Yeah.
These things, furniture made out of skeletons.
Yeah,
and
the imagery. And anywhere you look.
The props they had were crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one, I just noticed this for the first time watching this. When Sally is tied to the chair.
The hands.
In the dining room.
The hands.
She's tied to arms. Human arms. And I'm like, oh my God, I never saw that before.
Yeah.
That is sick.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, that's horrible. I noticed that too.
I was hoping it was Kirk's arms too.
Could have been. Covered with hair.
Yeah.
Some of the shots in this movie are just amazing. When they pick up the hitchhiker, you just see that massive blue sky and a little tiny van down there. There's lots of voyeuristic low shots, and camera angles and high camera angles and movements. Like when they first get to the house, Franklin's house, you see that really low shot, like somebody's watching them. You see it move through the grass.
Yeah.
The sunset shot, the Sally's eyeball scene, that is just disturbing.
Yeah, that's
get closer and closer and closer. And when Jerry gets hit with the sledgehammer when he goes into the house, it's so scary because I heard in the commentary or read somewhere that he didn't know that was going to happen. So when you see Leatherface coming with that hammer to hit him, he screams, and it's so because he's really scared.
Yeah,
he doesn't know that's going to happen to him. There's also some black comedy in this too. He's just a cook. Shut up, you bitch hog. The broom scene with the cook, where he's kind of poking him.
Yeah, that was
smacking that broom handle in the gas station.
You feel bad for laughing, but
yeah. And Grandpa does that little shuffle when he drinks the blood. He's kind of kicking his feet like a little baby. And the family themselves is sort of like this demented Three Stooges. Clearly a movie made by talented kids thinking outside the box, and all adds up to this watershed moment in horror and movie history. Oh, like one more thing, I just got to say, Franklin was very annoying for the film. Turns out he was the only one that wanted to leave. So Franklin was.
He's the only practical guy. Yeah.
He's like, come on, let's go to that gas station. Let's get the hell out of here. What are we doing? So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. All right. Great take, Aaron. So, Mike, let's talk about yours. Same question to you.
Yeah, Franklin had some logic in him, but they foreshadowed him playing with a knife, and never really went anywhere. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, that whole.
Why does he like his knife so much? Yeah,
that's kind of weird.
Odd.
Yeah.
I came with this movie wide open eyes, never seen it before, green as the grass.
Yeah.
All I knew about it was it had a lot of sequels after it, and a guy named Leatherface. After watching it, though, you have to watch it with some respect, like
right.
It's almost, you think of it now, looking back at how many movies, it spawned, the whole idea of a mass killer killing a group of young people. I mean, wow, this was the movie that started it. And you're watching it going, I guess going into it for me, that's what I'm thinking watching it. So it's again, Justin, it's one of those things where I'm watching it with the jaundiced eye, trying to like catch mistakes or catch errors,
Yeah.
But it's really hard. This movie was so well done. It's a slow boil of tension in it, and something bad's going to happen because the movie, how the title is Massacre, and it's coming.
The title is a spoiler, yeah.
Even the way it's done, though, it's like there's this foreboding and just like the weirdos at the cemetery when they show up to see your grandpa's grave.
Oh yeah,
these people aren't right in the head, and then then you meet, you got the hitchhiker guy after that, and then the two weirdos at the barbecue place.
It almost presented like a parallel universe, all right. It was like
it is, yeah, and
it wasn't Texas; it was some alien place,
It was, but it's like Aaron was saying, the scenery. I mean, Tobe Hooper uses Texas so well in the cinematography, and actually, it's one of those rare times when you say, wow, the director really used his location as almost another character in the movie.
And even the weather, like the heat. I mean, the heat.
Yeah, the heat. It's foreboding. It's like just this constant heat, and everybody's sweaty.
Yeah.
You got the cinema veritas kind of camera work. Like it seems like they use so many cameras on it. It gave the impression of a big budget movie. And then the off-screen gore, for me, it didn't really take away from it still being a slasher horror movie because there's enough it's situational horror in this movie that makes you queasy and just unsettled. The killer is actually crazy. I mean, the fact he really doesn't say anything, he just grunts and makes noises, and the moment almost guilt he has after killing Jerry. Where he's like looking around and he's like almost has this. He doesn't have to say a word. You just see looking through his little leather mask. You're like,
no, that's
or
really
skin
good.
mask. It's like, oh,
really good point. Yeah, that's that extra element of realism that makes this really all the more horrifying.
It does. And then like we said before, it has just these amazing props, and it captured that kind of like documentary found footage almost. Ethos you don't see in movies, and like I said, if you watch it with that kind of reverence and just know that this was the movie, it makes sense. I can see why so many people have this rated so highly after watching it.
Well, that's a great take, Mike, and I appreciate you going through this one, buddy, because I know this isn't your cup of tea. These aren't movies you watch.
Ever since my uncle took me to see Friday the 13th in the theater, I've been a little squeezy about these slasher kind of movies.
We appreciate you taking one for the team.
No, sure.
Thanks, Mike. I picked this local film. So
like I say, I'm glad I would never watch this movie unless it was on our podcast. And the fact that I was actually set down and forced, Malcolm McDowell style, and Clockwork Orange to watch this movie. I mean, it's like I feel better for it because it really does. You can see why this movie was copied and so many times because it is a pioneer.
All right, so for all of our viewers that have not seen this film, be like Mike. Be brave and watch this film. So, all right, for my take, guys, I'm not too far away from you guys altogether. I mean, my first watch was I think in 1988 or 89. This was a late night after my girlfriend at the time's parents went to sleep. We watched this on VHS, and all I remember of it is I was really just kind of off put by it. I don't know if I was just not in the mood for a horror film or whatever. I was other circumstances were in my head, but I didn't not like it. It was just too intense for me at the time. I didn't like being put in that situation where I was constantly scared and horrified the whole time. So it was kind of off-putting. especially that third act is just constant screaming, and it's just there's something like visceral and unnerving about that for me personally that I couldn't take it. So I wouldn't say I didn't like it, but it was one of those things like, you know what, I saw it once, I don't need to see it again, and I hadn't seen it again until I watched it this morning. I watched it at some people go to church on Sunday mornings. I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre on a Sunday morning in the middle of the day with all the lights on, and even then I was unnerved by it with with the lights on and the other TV in the background. I was watching other stuff and I had other things going on, but
you didn't watch the Panthers, did you? That'd be real hard.
That was horrible too. And I was watching my beloved Arsenal team play, but what I found myself, I couldn't take my eyes off the screen, and I think after years and years of watching millions of hours of movies, you start to form a context and a worldview of what these movies are. And I had an interesting kind of point of reference. I watched the original Friday the 13th last night, the one from 1980. Oh. And as like as a reference point, that movie's got its own charm. It's not great cinema, but it pales in comparison to the impact of a horror film, because I mean, this is essentially a mutated version or iteration of Texas Chainsaw with the horror, the mindless, faceless killer trope and all that. But this one was just so much more visceral and like just hits you at the molecular level of scary. And Aaron, you kind of touched about this a little bit. I don't think you would ever get desensitized this movie. I think the more you watch it, I don't think you're going to lose that. And I think that's really the bookmark of a great movie that's very well made.
I can vouch for that because I've seen this movie a lot of times over the years, and it still has that.
Well, it shares the same traits as other iconic horror films that keep scaring me. Like The Shining or The Exorcist. It's quality horror in the fact that it's imagery and atmospheric, and it relates to things. It doesn't rely on cheap jump scares or torture porn or anything. And this genre has the tendency to cannibalize itself a lot. But this was the real deal. This was the OG horror film. This is where all these, like them or not, where this subgenre of horror came from. And to see it done so well and originally, it's like seeing a dinosaur. It's like, wow, that really happened. That really existed. And again, I think it all boils down to the question is, should I be seeing this? If you can say that about a horror film, then it's done its job. And I watched it again as a grown man, and in the middle of the day, and I was still scared by it. So I just really appreciate it. So I think my first watch, I might have been maybe at a 2 out of 5, but I think at least a 4 out of 5 on this one. And I didn't go 5 because I still resent being scared and manipulated like that through film. But just a great watch, and glad I watched it. Again, I probably wouldn't have watched this if I wasn't triggered by this podcast. So, Aaron, thank you very much. I'm going to be thinking about Leatherface tonight. Thanks to you.
Hey, you're welcome, boys. You're welcome.
So one of the interesting things about this movie was the family dynamic of it, which we thought was sweet and adorable. Hollywood has a tendency to kind of focus on dysfunctional families. So, and none greater showcased than by the Sawyer family in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So we thought for this week's installment of You Just Made the List, Pal, we take a look at some our other favorite examples of dysfunctional families in film. So we're kind of running short on time here, so maybe we'll just drive it down to maybe 2, maybe a couple of honorable mentions. So Aaron, why don't you get us started? Talk about some of your favorite examples of dysfunctional families in cinema.
Yeah, you got it. There's no shortage of those, right? Nope. Okay, I'm going to go number 1. I'm going to go with Buffalo 66.
Nice. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen this film. Truly dysfunctional family. We have Billy Brown, who says he's a CIA agent. He tells his family he's a CIA agent. He's very successful, and he has a beautiful girl he's going to marry. He's trying to get their love because his parents are just some of the worst parents you've ever seen in history. All they do is watch the Miami Dolphins. They pay no attention to Billy. The dad killed Billy's dog when he was little. They're just truly horrible people. But Billy tries to impress them. by saying he's a CIA agent, and he ends up kidnapping Christina Ricci to play his future wife, his fiance, and he wants to get back at the kicker from the Miami Dolphins.
Wait, is this Ace Ventura?
Yeah, it's some parallels.
Places out.
So that's my first dysfunctional family movie. It's I highly recommend it.
No, that's a great one. All right, great pick, Aaron. So, Mike, we're on to you. Some of your examples.
I'm gonna try. I tried to stay in the horror genre. So I will go with Hereditary from 2018.
Oh, nice.
Talk about a movie that's unsettling. It revolves around the death of a grandmother in the movie and then it's Toni Collette's mom. And as they investigate like what she was about and everything, things get weird. Let's put it that way. Really, I don't want to spoil it because it's still kind of a new movie in a way, but
yeah,
shenanigans occur. You find out some deep dark secrets about this family, and things happen. Let's just put it that way.
That's always one I've wanted to see, but I because I knew it was probably on the same tier as like.
Yeah,
it looks disturbing, and I've never had the courage to watch
disturbing. I mean, the title of the movie kind of gives it away as a family dysfunctional thing. The ending is bat crap crazy. I want to say there's still you can go online and see people who debate what the ending even means. It's so wacky and just it's not necessarily scary as much as it's just one of those WTF kind of moment movies where you're like, oh my God, this can't be happening.
Yeah, that serves the same purpose for me.
It's there you go. Very disturbing, but it's Hereditary.
All right, that's a great pick. All right, so my first pick, I'm going to keep it in the genre here. I'm going to talk about the White family. We're talking about Carrie White from the 1974 movie Carrie, Stephen King's first novel. Came out this year, 74. And Brian De Palma adapted it to the screen, starring famously Sissy Spacek as a titular character there, and her mother, Margaret, played by Piper Laurie, horrendously. But they're kind of an ostracized family. They're religious zealots. She raises Carrie in this very strict religious background. Carrie's got telekinetic powers, so that doesn't help with her journey through high school. And we all kind of know the story of Carrie, but it all kind of starts from the family dynamic of her mother just locking her in a room with the Jesus on the cross and that imagery, and just talks about her body. She refers to her breasts as dirty pillows here, Mike, which I thought was always my
yes.
I guarantee that I'll draw a laugh at anybody, Aaron. You can talk about their dirty pillows. But just the psychological trauma and torture that Carrie had to go through as a child kind of helped all these telekinetic things manifest and really become sort of evil. There's a lot of violence and horror that's relatable to everybody because it's kind of centered around, puberty and growing up and all that stuff. High school's hard enough. Can you imagine being, in that situation? But a really seminally scary story, but the family dynamic behind it really kind of forces the narrative of the film, and that's why I picked that one. So that's my first pick is Carrie from 1976. All right, Aaron, we're back around to you.
Nice.
Maybe your final pick and maybe a couple honorable mentions to
Sure. I stepped out of the horror genre for most of my picks because after seeing the family in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I had enough of terrible families for a while. So, but still, I'm gonna here's another bad family movie. I'm gonna go with The Outsiders.
Oh, look at you!
Ford Coppola's classic. We have a group of outsiders played by lots of future Hollywood heartthrobs, and
all of them.
Yeah, most of them. Yeah, it was great casting. Each one of them seems to have a different family dynamic. The main group has lost their parents. The older one's raising the younger two. Johnny comes from a terrible family situation, and they all basically just form a family around each other. Like the Ramones said, I'm an outsider outside of everything. And so they find a family together.
Yeah.
So I'll do some honorable mentions here. I'm going to go with, you guys ever mentioned Whatever Happened to Baby Jane on the show?
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, did we? Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good dysfunctional family.
Best villains, over the top villains, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that family's a little messed up, Aaron. That's a good go.
that's my honorable mention.
Yeah.
Right there.
That's a great one. All right, Mike, you're up. It's your turn. Do it for Johnny, Mike.
All right, let's do it for Johnny. I got some.
You're so
I got some good honorable mentions here. Let's do Great Santini from 1979.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
How's it going, sports fans? The Godfather 1 and 2. You want a dysfunctional family? Go with some mafia families from fiction or from fact.
That works. Sure. Yeah.
Legends of the Fall. Kind of a soap opera kind of movie, but you have three brothers, that are either cheating on each other or dying in World War I. And it's got Brad Pitt with long hair. That's horrible.
Horror. It is a scary show, Mike.
It is scary. And then I want to throw in Get Out from 2017, the movie that shows a family that is, not really dysfunctional as much as just has some bad motives, let's say. But my favorite, I'm gonna throw a curveball at you, Justin. This is not a dysfunctional family. This is a very functional family, and it's the movie Monster Go Home from 1966.
Yes,
it has a family that involves a Frankenstein, a bride of Frankenstein, a werewolf, a vampire, and a monster or two.
Just stop it, Mike. You're killing me.
Oh God, that's a great.
It was one of my favorite movies as a kid. It was colorized, and just to see the actual monsters.
Yeah, to see that
movie was like
crazy green color.
Yes, it made it a little more scarier.
It sure did. Yeah.
And then they have to occupy an inherited mansion they have in England, so they all fly to England, except for Marilyn. I think Marilyn's absent from this movie, believe it or not.
No, she's in it, but it's played by a different actor.
It's really freaky. It's not Pat Priest, and it's off-putting.
Like when the Brady Bunch would get a different Marcia or Jan.
Yes.
For their television shows. Yeah.
But the premise of the movie is they have to scare criminals out of their rightful home, and it's a great movie. I enjoyed it.
Great pick, Mike.
Thank you.
I gotta watch it now.
Yeah, it holds up.
Like Grandpa. Yeah.
Al Lewis is great.
Herman, get the door.
Hyman.
All right, those are great. So my second one's a little more artsy, but I'm going to go with a movie called Frailty, 2002. Directed by I guess show icon at this point, Bill Paxton. He also stars in it. It's kind of set in two periods. One is this small family, the father and his two sons, telling tales of growing up. The father has had a message from God that he's sent on earth to kill demons. And the whole story is kind of told in flashback, and now because the boys kind of took some of these traits into their life. And what was interesting about this movie is that the family dynamic. You never want to think your father's crazy, and most of the time these kids do. But then the movie does a lot of weird twists and turns where they kind of play around with that element that maybe Dad wasn't crazy, maybe there were elements that he was fighting demons, and it has a serial killer play, more recent version of the story where they're kind of looking back through the eyes of a serial killer. But as we learn more about the backstory, we learn there's some twists and turns, but it was a really odd kind of family dynamic in that movie. And it was kind of a sleeper movie that not really a lot of people pay attention to, but usually when you see it, it's one of those things like a lost kind of treasure. I think people really love that. So I'm going to go with the movie Frailty, which was a really great watch from 2002, directed by and starring Bill Paxton. So
that's the late.
I have a couple honorable mentions I want to talk about too. The movie Basket Case from 1987. A beautiful story about the Bradley brothers, Dwayne, and his vestigial Siamese twin that he cut off his shoulder and lives in a basket that does all his killing. It's just a cheap little horror film. Just awful. We can't go through a family dynamic without talking about the Torrances from The Shining. And we also have the another wonderful family in horror, the Jupiter family, from the movie The Hills Have Eyes, which is on the same kind of tier as Texas Chainsaw Massacre. These are just cannibals that live in the desert as opposed to cannibals that live in Texas that serve barbecue. But both those have the veil of realism undertone, and it's really scary and just not a good watch for sure. But that'll wrap up my list. So guys, I'm kind of spent. We had a great discussion about one of the most vile and repulsive yet wonderful movies of all time. But to Aaron, again, thanks for showing up and recommending this movie and being part of our Halloween series. So it was always a pleasure.
My pleasure.
So if you have any questions or complaints, I'm guessing complaints about the nature of our show, you can send us to an email to us at nostalgicrubs@gmail.com.
Forward those complaints to me, Justin.
I'll forward those. We'll send them to the complaint department.
I want to send them a plate of barbecue from Central Texas.
Yeah. Gift certificate to Sawyer's Barbecue.
Just do a blanket reply. Shut up, bitch.
With the gift certificate to We Slaughter Barbecue. For show notes and coming attractions, always make sure to check out our Instagram page. That's at Grumpy Nostalgia. We put up a few more reels about our upcoming shows, and you can always, that's our best chance to reach us through a direct message through that. So we'd love to hear from you. Put some movies of your own that you'd like us to cover in the comments. That would be great. Again, if it's the first,
as long as it's not Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Chainsaw Massacre 2, yeah, we need a break.
Is a sequel better than the original? Aaron.
The sequel on a camp level is great. It's fun. It's got great characters. It's hilarious. It's a little less horrifying, a little more comedic, I think. Aaron, would
Justin,
you agree?
have you seen it lately?
I have. Well, maybe that's what I remember of it. So maybe I.
Got to try watching it now.
It's not a rom-com. Don't get me wrong, and it's not.
No, it's
but it picks up right where the first one left off. so if you didn't get enough, you can carry it over to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. If you've been listening to the show for a while or just recently, remember to follow. That really helps us out. And please rate and review. We'd love to hear what your comments are about our show. I want to start a new segment I'm going to call it the Grumpy Nostalgia Rerun Series. We'd like to ask some of you to go back and listen to specific shows that we did way back when that didn't get as many listens as we'd like, that you may have missed if you're new to the show or whatever. So if you would, please reconsider revisiting the episode we did on Speed, the movie Speed. From our first season, it was episode 10, released on June 22nd. October
Dennis Hopper, he's in that one, right?
Yeah, we talked about Dennis Hopper a lot.
We got to do another Dennis Hopper movie.
Yeah, so, but
he's in Texas Chainsaw Massacre too.
So this would be a big barometer to see, nice barometer to see how much our audience is listening to us. We can track the downloads by episode. So, if you would, please reconsider going back and checking out the movie Speed. We had a lot of time doing that. We didn't feel enough people got to hear that one, so please do that for us.
Please.
Love to Speed.
This was the third episode of our month-long series. Next week, we're going to go into the fourth. We've got New York residents and show fans Headbang and Mosh Pit. You're not going to want to miss their take. We're not going to tell you what the movie is, but we can tell you that sweet dreams are made of these. So you're really going to enjoy that. So make sure you check our next episode coming up.
So does it involve cows in a pasture?
No. Okay. All right. So that's going to wrap it up, boys. Again, Aaron, thanks again for joining us. We really had a great time talking about this film. Great pick. So
thank you, boys.
Right, so that's going to wrap it up, guys. So before we get out of here, Mike, anything else you want to say? Last shot.
I just want to let y'all know that Saturn is in retrograde, so you may want to think about doing some introspection this time of the year.
That's a good point. And like the other guy said at the cemetery, it's them that laughs that knows better. All right. So for Aaron and for Mike, this is Justin, and we will see you again next time.
Shut up, you bitch hole.